All right, that's been quite a long tea break and a lot of discussions happening. So that's, you know, in modern times, we've lost the ability to connect. We think we're connected because we're playing with our phones and messaging and things like that. But in actual fact, we're disconnected. And so that's an important part, you know, for you to also to be present, you know, working with your phone, these are distractions for this conference. And yeah, it's important that you be present. I'd like to introduce Murray Thompson as the keynote speaker, the chairperson of Potato SA. He's a multifaceted individual with a diverse career spanning, he's got many industries that he's been involved with. He's also the founder of Anthon Business Group, where it has been instrumental in the success of the company. His leadership style is emphasized by back-to-basic approach, focusing on sustainable practices and supporting the entire potato industry. He was also awarded the Syngenta National Potato Producer of the Year award in 2022 for his outstanding contributions to the industry. He's committed to excellence, innovation. He's a respected figure, both in the agriculture and technology sectors, and he has a great ability to adapt and thrive in challenging environments. Thank you, Murray. Please come to the stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, thank you. Some feedback early. For most of us, farming has the ability to consume all day of every day that we have available. There's always another decision waiting, another field inspection to be done, another irrigation schedule to adjust, another creditor to pay, unfortunately, another load to send to market. Always another problem that can't wait until tomorrow. That's simply the nature of farming. It keeps us focused on today, on the here and now. And that's what makes these next 2 days so valuable. It's an opportunity to step back from our own businesses and spend more time working on shaping the long-term future of our industry. Not just thinking about the next crop or even the next season, but asking ourselves whether we're prepared enough for the years ahead. And I think that's why we're really here. Farming is one of the most optimistic professions in the world. Think about what we actually do. We invest significant resources months before we know the outcome. Where 1 + 1 can equal 5 or -2, and much of what affects that is out of our control. We prepare land before we know the year's rainfall. We plant before we know the market size or prices. We make decisions today whose success will only become evident after the harvest. Every season begins with unbelievable uncertainty. Yet every season we plant again. I've never met a farmer who could consistently accurately predict the future, but I have met many who have prepared for it exceptionally well. And perhaps that's one of the greatest lessons that agriculture teaches us. The future seldom rewards those who try to predict it. It usually rewards those who are prepared for it. Every farm has 2 lists. The first contains everything that we worry about. Rainfall, too much or too little, climate change, fertilizer prices and possibly availability, electricity reliability, fuel prices, and consumer behavior. Domestic politics is always at front of our mind, and we're all affected by global events. Conversations like these happen on farms and around braais across South Africa every day. And many of these issues is what's putting our sector under such tremendous pressure presently. And the tragedy is they're also the things that we can do the least about. And then there is a second list: the quality of our seed, the health of our soil, water management, the information we gather, technology we adopt, the people we employ, the practical decisions we make every day. These are the things that we can influence. The most successful farming businesses often appear to always have the best luck. Lucky timing on the markets, lucky to have their equipment not break down at the wrong time, lucky to emerge unscathed from this year's pest or plague, and endless lucky circumstances that compound from year to year. Perhaps they are simply the businesses that spend more time working on the second list than worrying about the first. When I looked through the program for the next 2 days, the thought that kept coming back to me, every discussion that we're going to be working through is on that second list. Every session is really about the tools that allow us to make better decisions in our businesses. We'll begin with production, climate-smart farming, breeding, seed, soil, and water. Those are all conversations about improving the decisions we make before the planter even enters the field. We'll discuss soil health in great depth and plant nutrition and plant vitality. Resilient crops are seldom the result of only 1 or 2 good decisions or 1 or 2 good solutions. They are usually the result of hundreds of good micro decisions that are made consistently over time. We'll explore regulation, because confidence in agriculture depends on practical experience being supported by good science and being part of the solution that leads to sensible policy. Tomorrow, we'll broaden the discussions into logistics, markets, consumers, technology, and the long-term future of our industry. Again, those aren't separate conversations. They're all part of preparing ourselves for a changing world. One of the things that farming teaches you is that very few important outcomes are decided at the end of the crop. Most are decided at the beginning, with good front-end loading of good strategies. Most of us have had seasons where we look back at the harvest and realize the outcome had actually been shaped months earlier, perhaps by the seed we choose, perhaps how we prepared the soil, perhaps by spraying for tuber moth 1 week too late, perhaps planting later than we had planned. The harvest has ways of revealing decisions we made months before. Industries as a whole work exactly the same way. The strength of our industry 5 or 10 years from now will be shaped by decisions we make here today and tomorrow. By investing into research, by improving production systems, by developing better varieties, and by sharing knowledge, by preparing. Agriculture can never be a collection of isolated businesses. It has always been a chain of people depending on one another, be they researchers, breeders, seed producers, commercial farmers, processors, marketers, or retailers. Each play a different role, and each sees the industry from a different perspective. Different perspectives and objectives don't weaken an industry, provided we keep listening to one another, provided we keep learning from one another, and provided we keep coming back to the same table to openly share ideas with one another. And I hope that's exactly what happens for the next 2 days. Something I hope we never lose is the understanding that this is first and foremost a farmer event. It is meant to be a forum where farmers can cross-pollinate ideas with farmers from across the country. It really is an amazing opportunity. If you look through the program, you'll see researchers, specialists, and industry experts. But you'll also see farmers leading many of these conversations as the panel invigilator. And I think that's exactly how it should be. Agriculture is at its best when practical farming when practical farming experience and good science work together. Neither replaces the other. Each makes the other better. The same is true for our industry organizations. Sometimes it's easy to talk about Potato South Africa or Potato Certification Service as though they exist somewhere alongside our industry, as though they are separate from us. I can assure you they are not. They exist because farmers recognize that some things are simply too important and too large and too complicated for any one business to do alone. Research, certification, new market development, industry representation in particular, and the ability to bring us all together to exchange ideas and challenge and support one another. Those aren't services provided to farmers. There are things farmers have chosen to build together through these organizations. We start thinking of our industry organizations as them, then we also start believing that the future of our industry is someone else's responsibility. It isn't. The future of this industry has always belonged to the farmers who participate in it. The industry organizations are simply one of the ways we work together to achieve what none of us could achieve on our own, because institutions are only ever as strong as the people who shape them. Technology is also a big focus in the discussions we're having in the next 2 days, and is something that has changed tremendously and very rapidly during our careers. But one thing hasn't. Technology has never replaced good judgment. It has simply given us better information on which to exercise that judgment. A weather station does not decide when to irrigate. A farmer does. Satellite imagery does not decide what action to take. A farmer still has to interpret what it means and what to do about it. Technology changes, but the importance of good judgment does not. People often describe farmers as risk takers, and I've never been entirely comfortable with this description. Farmers don't spend their lives taking risks. They spend their lives managing them. We insure, we diversify, we maintain machinery, improve genetics, we test soils, we monitor weather, we prepare. Not because preparation guarantees success. Nothing in farming guarantees success, but preparation improves the odds tremendously of that success. I'll leave you with one final thought. When we leave here, the weather forecast will still be outside of our control. Markets will continue to move, input costs will continue to change, and no doubtably increase outside of our control. The challenges facing agriculture will not disappear. But perhaps we'll leave here in the next 2 days with just one better idea, one different perspective, or one practical solution for our farms, or one conversation that changes the decision we'll make when we get home. If that happens, these 2 days would have been worthwhile. Because every harvest is shaped by its decisions made long before the harvest, and every industry's future is shaped in exactly the same way. Not by predicting tomorrow, but by preparing for it. And that's what we're all here to do. Thank you again, everyone, for making the time to be here, to help shape and guide our industry in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murray. You know, you can invent alone, but you cannot innovate alone. You need people to innovate. You innovate together. So thanks for reminding us about the collaboration. I haven't introduced myself, and I want to start with a poem. So if I can have my poem so on the screen. Well, I'll anyway, seems they're not ready for the poem. Okay, who am I? And who are you? And what do I know? And what do you know? You know, what do I really know? I do not know. And let's agree not to know and explore the space between us and to create and co-create. This is what this conference is about, is emptying your cup of knowledge. Because you have to have a cup that's not full. How can you learn? How can you learn something from somebody if your cup is full? And what is very important is we can only learn from people that are different than ourselves. Just think about that. Look about the different perspectives of other people and put a different hat on in this conference and how other people in the industry in actual fact is functioning, not only from your own side. I'm going to remind you during this conference, I'm going to put up various hats just to make it present again, right? So you can laugh at the hats that I've brought, okay? And that's good, but that's because it needs to remind you that when you're having a discussion with somebody, just also put yourself in the shoes of that person. It's a very, very important thing to consider. Now, I'm Kuni Middle. A lot of people used to call me an auditeur, but I'm not an auditeur, I'm a niveteur. Auditeur, they look to the past, right? And many auditeur, I refer to my competition as auditeur, and I refer to myself as a niveteur because we look into the future. And again, this conference is about looking into the future, and it's about innovation. But before I talk about innovation, I'd like to put down some ground rules. Be present. We spoke about that earlier on. Put away distractions. Yeah, give the fellow delegates your full attention. Yeah, and then because the next idea might come from a single sentence. If you're not listening carefully, you might miss it. And share generously. Share your experiences, share your successes, share your failures. The value of the conference grows when everybody contributes. You're not here just to listen, you're here to share. Be curious, ask questions, challenge assumptions. The best innovators are lifelong learners. Most successful companies in the world ask questions. They're good observers, and we'll talk about that. Respect every voice and challenge respectfully. Everyone in this room brings a unique experience. Listen to understand. Remember the hats, even when you disagree. You always need to put on the hat of the other contributors in an industry. And then I think what is important, think beyond today, think bigger. Don't just ask, how does this affect my farm? Ask, what could this mean to our industry in 5 years? The jobs to be done. If you wake up every morning and you think about, how can I make South Africa better? Just one single thing that you can think about is every single South African wake up with that idea of saying, if what I'm doing today, is that going to make South Africa better? We'll be the most powerful nation in the world. Network with purpose. Yeah, connect. Introduce yourself to someone you don't know. One conversation can create your next opportunity. And I think what is very important is take action. Ideas only become innovation when it's implemented, when it's adopted. So if every delegate leaves here with practical ideas to save money, improve quality, reduce waste, or opens a new opportunity, then this conference will have been a success. So my challenge to each one of you, don't just collect information. Collect ideas that you'll actually implement. If we think about what is innovation, I think that a lot of people think innovation is a gadget, Apple's new tool or something like that, right? Innovation is doing new things or doing existing things in a new way. okay? Or what we call discontinuous improvement. Now, if you think about it, that some of the most successful companies, I see so many Toyotas, I refer to, many farmers love Toyota. And what's made Toyota successful is incremental improvement. They call it Six Sigma. They go to the factory, the Japanese have really worked on their systems and their technology actually to make their cars better and better every day. That's why you see so many reliable Toyotas out there. But the Japanese have realized that you can't just rely on incremental improvement. Because a candle maker that makes the candle and improves the candle every day will never develop the bulb. You'll have somebody that's improving an Volkswagen. He will never develop a car. So therefore you have to have different strategies in terms of what I call operational excellence and innovation excellence. It's very critical, and I think that every farmer in every industry is like a dance. One of the most successful companies in illustrating that is a company like Apple. Apple's been the most valuable company for many years. Now we have a new player. But why have they consistently been so successful? You know why? Because they know when to improve and when to innovate. And innovate is a jump. And improvement is a step. And you may laugh at me, but then you see when Apple came out with the first iPhone, it was a jump. And then they came with iPhone 2, 3, 4, 5, and they came out with the Apple iPad. It was a jump. And each time they jumped, they significantly increased their profits. And that's why you've got to think to yourself, when are you stepping on your farm in terms of, from an improvement perspective? And when are you jumping? Because jumping doesn't happen just by itself. You have to be a good observer. This is what this conference is really about, observing, taking in, making notes. Again, coming back to Apple. Apple is not the first mover. The phone was there, Nokia was there, BlackBerry was there, the camera was there, music player was there. I put those things, existing things together. Innovation, putting things together in a new way. How they created the iPhone. And this is how their strategy's been, this is the strategy that they followed. And that's why observing is the most important thing about innovation. Make sure that you're a good observer, because that is a very fundamental part of innovation. I think innovation is something that will unlock value, that needs to unlock value. It needs to be adopted, because otherwise it's just an invention. You could come up with a wonderful idea, but if people aren't adopting it, it's not innovation. And it needs to be feasible. I think many of you are faced with many suppliers that are giving you, we can sell you this, and we can do this, and we can do that. And you've got to ask yourself, what value is that going to unlock? And is it feasible? And will the people within my own operation adopt it? Because you can have wonderful technology, but there could be a resistance against technology. So Einstein said, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you'll always got, right? Doing more of the same will end up with the same result. But by not doing anything is a bigger risk. And again, coming back to the motor industry as an example. You have Mercedes and BMW and VW that brought out a new series, 3 Series. A couple of years later, another 3 Series with a little bit of improvement. Okay, and they were making a lot of money with a little incremental improvement, not disrupting the industry. And then came along Tesla. disrupted the entire industry, and Tesla's market value then exceeded the top 4 motor companies in the world. VW now is in trouble. The German manufacturers are in trouble. The Japanese surviving, and the Chinese have learned from Tesla. And just think about, so don't be too relaxed. If we don't disrupt ourselves, someone else eventually will. So Einstein also said something very interesting. He said, the fish is the last one to discover water. And therefore, your expertise sometimes is the biggest barrier to innovation. We come back to some industries where people felt that, listen, they know it all. So yeah, what is innovation? It's new to me. It's new to my farm. It's new to my business. It might be new to the market. It needs to be new for the world. It can be. And we start off with, in many instances, when Murray talked about it a bit, we start with frictions, what I call frictions. And the best way of handling a friction is you've got lots of frictions. You can have bad coffee in the morning as a friction, okay? There are lots of things that we can think about that's worrying us, and it's frictions on the farm. And the big thing is, in terms of innovation, is that look at your top 5. What are the things that are the biggest issues that you have? That's where the innovation opportunity sits. Forget about the other stuff. It's not that they're not important, but if you don't address the top 5, that is where where you can really hurt your business. So we are going to have 8 innovation focus points during this conference. Climate friction, how do we produce under uncertainty? Soil friction, how do we rebuild a living asset? Plant health friction, how do we move from reactive to predictive? Policy friction, how do we regulate without blocking progress? And value chain friction, how do we stop losing value after production? Consumer friction, how do we stay relevant? Execution friction, how do we turn ideas into action? And then future friction, how do we build a profitable and responsible industry? So yeah, I think that it is also important. I see that there's tea and there's biscuits and there's food, but we also got to think about innovating ourselves, all right? The body, mind, and the soul. You've really got to think about that. You have a healthy business, but many farmers are stressed. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of financial pressure. There's a lot of work pressure. And are we also looking after ourselves? With artificial intelligence, we are working harder because we can do more. Don't fool yourself that artificial intelligence is making it easier. It is, but you are doing more. And when doing more, you're working harder. So I'm asking Cindy to come forward from HiveMind to do a bit of health and wellness with you, okay? So every seed needs space to grow. Thanks, Cindy.
People problems. Good morning, everyone. So I am the very fortunate person to be tasked with the duty of making sure that everyone stays awake in this conference. So for the next 2 days, I will be the one popping up on stage to make sure that you are all awake and ready to engage. So as Kuni said, my name is Cindy and I represent the HiveMind sustainability team. And we focus a lot on the people aspect of the business, making sure that your teams are healthy and able to keep the pace. So as we've discussed today, we look at all the different things of soil health and the seeds. But what happens if the leader of the business isn't healthy? At some point, the wheels will come off and it won't be as sustainable. So I'm going to ask each of you just to stand up for a moment. Indulge me, if you will. And we're going to do a quick body scan. So for this, you need to close your eyes so you can be 100% present with yourself. So just closing your eyes and just gently scanning from the top of your head all the way down to the soles of your feet. And just becoming aware of any tension or any aches and pains that you might be aware of in your body right now. And once you've pinpointed that spot, you're welcome to open your eyes again. And while standing, I'm going to share a quick reset tip with you. So the reality is, as we mentioned, we are in this space of high demand and constant pressure, constant stress. And unfortunately, the subconscious mind doesn't know if you're actually being chased by a lion in this moment, or are you just worried about the delay of a delivery? And it's very important for us throughout the day to reset the nervous system. So I'm going to teach you a quick tip. It's called box breathing. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. Show of hands. Anyone ever heard of box breathing? I have like 3. Great. So today I'm teaching you something valuable, quick reset for your nervous system and to make sure that the mind comes back online, that you can have the logic function and the creativity that you need to solve problems. Right. So in your mind's eye, visualizing you've got a square box in front of you. Each side of the box counts 4. So on the left side, we have 4 counts breathing in. Top of the box, 4 counts holding the breath. The right side, breathing out for 4. Base of the box, 4 counts holding the breath. So breathe with me for 3 rounds. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. Final round. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. Great. So coming back to your normal breath, just reaching out with both hands as high as you possibly can. Let's extend our spine as tall as you possibly can. See if you can be a little bit taller than the person next to you. Shake it out. Let it loose. And you can take your seats again. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. So I'm going to leave you with one last thought. So growth begins when we create space to breathe. So the scan that we did earlier, the aches and pains that you felt in your body, just becoming aware of how your body feels now after breathing deeply. And if there's been any shift, make room to breathe. Thank you.
I had many areas of pain points, so I didn't know what one to focus on. So I'm a bit confused, but I've got my breath back. Well, let's start with session 1, production and climate smart. Right. I'd like to call the panelists to the stage. I know Professor Guy Migley would be, which is the Chief Academic Director, School of Climate Studies at Stellenbosch University, will be attending this in a live link. And the discussion lead will be Franlin Rousseau, a farmer. And the panelist, Professor Marika Labuschagne, from the University of the Free State, and Gabrielle Redelinghuys, Marketing and Intelligence and Incubation at Project Villa Crop Protection, and Professor Martin Steyn, Department of Plant and Soil Sciences, University of Pretoria. So if you think about innovation friction, the old production model was built for more predictable seasons. But farming is now happening under climate uncertainty, heat, drought, floods, water pressure, and disease shifts. So in the production, the big question is no longer how do we grow more, it's how do we grow reliably in less predictable climate. So my question to the panel is, how must the potato production change if climate uncertainty becomes the new normal? Thank you to the panelists.
By Villa Crop Protection het ons nog nooit geglo hierdie bedryf gaan net oor produkte nie. Dit gaan oor mense. Dit gaan oor verhoudings wat gebou word oor tyd en dit bly staan. En dit gaan oor die kennis wat ons saam opbou elke dag in die landerye. Vir meer as 30 jaar werk ons al saam met Suid-Afrikaanse produsente en verspreiders. Ons leer by julle en ontwikkel oplossings wat regtig werk waar dit saak maak. Vandag is ons trots om een van die land se voorste verskaffers van gewasbeskerming te wees, met meer as 600 registrasies en sowat 900 veldproewe elke jaar. Maar dit is nie wat ons definieer nie. Wat ons definieer is jy. Jou ervaring, jou besluite, jou deursettingsvermoë. Deur ons internasionale koneksies met Winfield United bring ons wêreldklas wetenskap en innovasie na plaaslike toestande toe. Maar dit is die samewerking met produsente en verspreiders wat dit omskep in werklike resultate. Want wat regtig saak maak is nie wat in 'n laboratorium gebeur nie. Dit is wat werklik in jou landerye werk. Dis hoekom ons belê in inisiatiewe soos die Villa Regional Weather Reports wat hier plaaslike data op grondvlak gebruik, aangedryf deur miljoene regstreekse datapunte om praktiese, bruikbare leiding te gee wat jou help om gewasse te beskerm, insette te optimaliseer en met vertroue vooruit te beplan. Aan die einde van die dag is ons rol eenvoudig om saam met jou te staan en insigte en oplossings te lewer wat werklike resultate dryf waar die meeste saak maak. Villa Crop Protection. Ons bou saam met jou Suid-Afrika se landboutoekoms.
Welcome everyone for the first session of this great conference, and thank you very much for being here and inviting all of us. So I believe I must introduce myself. I'm Franlyn Rousseau, a female farmer who didn't choose to be one. It happened. So I'm just farming my late dad and my late husband's farm now for 5 years. But in short, we've been in the potato business for nearly 32 years. For the frozen market, for the industry processing. So the little that I know, I had to put it back on the farm, chose the right people, and I'm just happy to be part of this so that I can learn, because my cup is a bit empty, and I'm happy to ask the questions today. So I just want to introduce my panel and ask them all to introduce themselves. Marika.
Hello, I'm Marika Labuskaghni. I'm from the Free State University. I'm a plant breeder and I have a special interest in climate resilience breeding and also improvement of crop quality.
I'm Gabrielle Redelinghuys. I'm project lead for incubation projects at Villa Crop Protection, which is involved over the last 6 years, climate smart agriculture projects in various forms.
Morning, I'm Martin Steyn. I'm at the University of Pretoria and I've been working on potatoes my whole life as a researcher, mostly on water, nutrition, agronomy topics. And we've done quite a bit of climate change, or not the forecast, but the response of potatoes to climate change and how farmers can adapt to that, and what we can expect for the different production regions over the last maybe 15 years already. So yeah, I hope we can answer some questions today.
I just want to bring in Prof. Guy. I believe he's in with a link. Just ask if he can also maybe introduce himself.
Am I linked yet?
Yes, you can go ahead.
I can hear myself. Guy Midgley. I've been eating potatoes for most of my life and enjoying them very much. I'm essentially a plant physiologist, but I have graduated to become more of a climate scientist, and I've been also studying the origins of farming in this context. So I've got a very broad interest in agriculture, climate variability. I think I'm going to put my headphones on because I'm getting this feedback. Unless the team can switch off their microphone in their computer, so I don't hear myself and keep on tripping myself up. Sorry, mate.
Prof. Guy, I believe your whole presentation, you can start with what you want to bring to the Congress, and then I'll start with my questions.
Yeah, I was asked to do a little background talk, and very, very short. I'll start by saying that, people started farming and eating potatoes about 10,000 years ago in South America. Which is very interesting because all the other crops were domesticated in the area of Turkey, in the Fertile Crescent. So potatoes are a very, very interesting crop. And we know that they were successfully adopted by people because the indigenous peoples of South America show a radical increase in the amylase gene, which is used to digest starch. So obviously people who were eating potatoes in that region were successful because they increased in the population. But farming essentially is what has made us civilized and what has made us a modern civilization, the ability to produce food sustainably and predictably. So with that in mind, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how climate has affected two other agricultural industries that we're working with at the School for Climate Studies. So if I could have the next slide. This is work we're doing with the stock farmers and rangeland farmers of the Eastern Karoo. And what we found is that if you look at the rainfall and temperature records, the summer growing season has quite dramatically improved in the Eastern Karoo, which is we think been boosting the value of land and the potential for meat production in this region. You can see there the rainfall and temperature records combined in the summer rainfall region from 1900, and you can see that the whole system has shifted upwards into a more productive state. 35% more rainfall and about almost 2 degrees warmer. So for that high elevation cool region, this is a boost. Next slide. And one of the things that the farmers have noticed is this huge increase in grassland in their area. So if you look at match photographs taken in the late 1800s and what you see today, the grass has moved right across the space. Now that may look like a good thing, but it also brings risks because in this industry, grass burns and it can destroy felt production. So next slide. So what we've noticed is that this is not just one site, it's a pattern. It's across a vast array of that region. This whole farming industry is being affected by a long-term, decades-long trend where most of the sites are gaining in grass. It's the grass is moving towards the west. Next slide. So we've been working with them, building some models to work out why the grasses have been increasing. It's not to do with management, it's to do with fire and a different climate. So both of those things together have been locking in more and more grass into this region. Now that changes the whole farming pattern in this area, because you have to start worrying about managing fire. Your potential for increased cattle production, where you previously were only producing sheep, and this is a very significant shift, and it's well observed, it's well documented, and we have attributed it with a high degree of reliability on the warming, wetting, and higher CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. That has all basically increased production in this area. Isn't that fascinating? So this is an area that seems to be benefiting, at least now, from global warming. Next slide. In the Western Cape, on the other hand, where we're working with fruit and wine farmers, we've seen some serious extreme event impacts. And this is just to advertise the value of local climate knowledge. This is a weather station we've installed on the mountains in the catchment area of the Breda River. And what it shows you there on the 11th of May, the 10th, 11th, and the 12th of May, the rainfall and the high winds with the cutoff low that drove the flooding that we observed in that area. Now, in the Breda River, they didn't record a lot of rainfall, but all the rainfall came from the mountains. And you can see there, 405 millimeters on the 11th of May, followed by 150 millimeters the following day. That's the water that rushed down and destroyed a huge amount of farmland, took away infrastructure, destroyed roads, railways, unbelievable damage to the Western Cape. So if you think climate and variability isn't affecting farming, and farming that has been going on for decades to centuries, I think you're living in a dream world. So we need to wake up to this reality. Okay, next slide. What is coming? I was asked just to talk briefly about El Nino. And we are hearing a lot of scare stories about El Nino, and justifiably so. But it's important to note that the El Nino index that we're using here in South Africa is outdated. And the new index, which is called the Relative El Nino Index, or the RONI, Relative, let's not worry about what it stands for. The old index was called the ONI, the new index is called the RONI. The new index, which corrects for global warming of the sea surface temperature, gives us a less extreme prediction of the El Nino intensity that is to come. I will also say that no two El Ninos have been the same. And so in 1998, you will see we had a big El Nino, but Southern Africa did not experience drought conditions. In 2015, we had a big El Nino, and we did. And in 1983, we had a big El Nino, and we did. So we don't know for 100% certain what is to come. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that if you use this adapted index, the corrected index, the risk may not be quite as high as we think. But let me show my last slide. If we go to the very last slide, let's go to the last slide. Okay, this is the El Nino prediction for 2026 in comparison with all the other El Ninos in the past. And you can see that if you use the ONI index, you get that red dot. It's way above anything that we've seen before. Justifiably, we're concerned. But if you adjust it according to the relative index, it comes down quite a bit. You can see the blue arrow there. So it's still something to really worry about, but maybe not as extreme as is being predicted. So, while I don't think we should be hyperventilating, I do think our pulses should have increased, and our risk whiskers should be twitching. And with that, I will hand over to my other colleagues. I hope I've given you some sense of what is in store. Thank you.
Well, I'm just going to ask the question still anyway. Climate change or climate variability? Many farmers remain skeptical about climate change. What observable changes are you seeing in agriculture production that no producer can ignore, regardless of what they call it?
Well, the increased variability is what we're dealing with is a climate that's being juiced up by much higher ocean surface temperatures and atmospheric temperatures. And the ocean surface temperatures are really important because they cause an increase in evaporation and greater intensity of rainfall events. And we've seen that a lot across Southern Africa, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, where we've had actually La Nina conditions. And I think that to ignore this risk is really to have your head in the sand, because you're not only reducing the risk aspect, you are ignoring opportunity. And with taking opportunity through innovation comes profit and success. If you go into the future with an ideology that limits you from really accepting the real trends, I think you literally are tying one hand behind your back, and I don't see that makes any sense. So there are so many trends that are real. You know, the grass increase in the Karoo. If you argue that these data on climate are made up, they've done such a good job that they've convinced the grass even that the temperatures are increasing. So, it's not really a sustainable position to my mind. And that would be my response. Don't ignore it.
What is really changing on the farm then? Are rising temperatures the biggest concern, or is increased weather volatility more extreme? I mean, just the past year, many farmers can also agree. I mean, then it's too hot and then it's too dry and then we get so much rain that the crop is just dying out. What is the greater threat to potato production then?
Well, should I still answer? Is that okay?
Yes, you can carry on.
The long-term change in temperatures change all sorts of risks. For example, risks of pest and disease. If you have an insect that because it warms, it just increases its life cycle one more time, within a year, you get exponential growth in pest incidence. The extreme heat events can cause physiological damage to crops, and we are seeing some real departures from long-term averages. And then the unpredictability of rainfall and the extremeness of drought and flooding and waterlogging. These are all things that relate to the challenge in producing crops sustainably. But they're all things we can adapt to as long as we know what's going on.
Last question then. Can South Africa turn climate change into a competitive advantage? Compared to major potato production regions globally, does South Africa have opportunities that position us favorably for future potato production?
Absolutely. I think one of the big advantages for us is we've got this very diverse climate gradient over which we produce potatoes, from the west coast, where we have a winter rainfall regime, all the way to Mpumalanga, where we have a strong summer rainfall subtropical regime. And you can see that the three biggest producing areas are distributed across that entire gradient: the Western Cape, the Free State, and Mpumalanga, and the northeast. They are right across that gradient. We are producing massive amounts of potatoes, and I think that gives us an incredible advantage in relation to most potato producing countries which do not have that diversity of climate. So I think we've already made it work to our advantage, and we should continue to do so. There's no reason why we shouldn't continue to do so, as long as we know what we're doing and we know what the future brings, and we're intelligent about it.
Definitely, and working together then. So, Prof. Martin, your turn. What does a climate-ready potato farmer look like?
Can I ask, are we going to have the presentations first before we...
Oh, do you want to do your
our small,
I'm
short
not sure. Do
presentations?
you want to do your presentations first?
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So who's up first? Is it me? Can we have my slides, please? Okay, before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge, like I said, we've been doing this work for a long time, and I'm presenting here, but there were many other colleagues from other institutions, other universities, who worked along on this, so I'd just like to acknowledge them. So, just to sort of link on to what Guy has just said, what are we expecting in terms of climate, or what are climatologists expecting in terms of climate for the future, and what we're actually already experiencing? And he mentioned them, but I would just like to emphasize them again. I think firstly, rising so-called greenhouse gases. Most important to us in agriculture is carbon dioxide levels. Changes in temperature and mostly warming in southern Africa, where we are about. Changes in rainfall patterns, he showed us for the Karoo, but in many parts rainfall is expected to decline in the long term. And what is probably most concerning is the increased frequency of these variable intense events, like heat waves, cold fronts, severe rainfall, tropical cyclones, etc. Because those are more difficult to plan for than the long-term gradual change in temperature or carbon dioxide that I think we can more easily plan for. So what do we expect in terms of agriculture, how it's going to affect especially potato production? And yeah, potato is a temperate crop. Like Guy said, it comes from the Andes Mountains of South America, so it's adapted to cool, moderate conditions. And many of the production regions where we're already growing potatoes are not really suitable for potatoes, although we're successfully producing it there. So the expectations are that potatoes will suffer more and more from heat stress and drought stress. Now, I know most of our production areas are under irrigation, so I think drought stress is going to get back to us in the sense that we might not have enough irrigation water. We'll be rationed to how much we can irrigate in terms of area, in terms of getting a crop through season. And I'd just like to step one step back, and some of you have seen this before, but I want to quickly talk about the simulation study. So we used models to look at what we can expect or for the future and what has happened in the past already in terms of potatoes. And in that study, we used climate forecasts from climatologists. We did not try to do that because it's not our expertise, but we use that information to downscale to regional level and to sort of try and work out how potatoes in each region of our country will be affected. Now, at that time, it was like about 40 years ago into the future. So it's more than 10 years ago when we started this. Now it's much closer. 2050 is just 24, 25 years from here. Jackie van der Waals and Kirsten Kruger were also involved in this study, and they looked specifically at what can we expect about pests and diseases. I'm not going to talk about that now, but we can touch on it when we get to the panel discussion. And then we looked into possible adaptation or mitigation strategies that farmers can follow to sort of, it's difficult to avert risk, but to minimize risk in the different production areas. And what we found is that for most regions, potato yields will increase if we have enough water to irrigate. And the reason for that is that potato is falls in a group of crops that we call C3 crops. They thrive on higher carbon dioxide levels, and because of that, photosynthesis increases and the crop becomes more productive. But it is counteracted by increasing temperatures. So you get this one positive effect, but you get then higher temperatures, which comes along with a change in climate over a long time. So in most of the regions, we found that adaptation is possible, mainly through shifting planting dates to sort of avoid heat or minimize the risk of heat. And then in the past 5 years or so, we did a follow-up study where we, under controlled conditions, sort of tested this hypothesis, these forecasts that we made by the models. So we measured many things. It was in growth chambers, so under controlled conditions where we could mimic temperature conditions of day-night conditions of a specific production region. We could manipulate the carbon dioxide level, and we looked at combinations of different temperatures and different carbon dioxide levels. If you look at this legend on the right-hand side about the treatments, the green arrow, sideways arrow, sort of is a normal, optimal day-night conditions, 12 degrees day minimum and 25 maximum. So it follows a normal diagonal curve, but the maximum is 25, which is sort of ideal conditions for potatoes. Then we had a temperature treatment, which was quite extreme, minimum temperature of 16 degrees and a maximum of 38, which is typical of what we get midsummer in sort of the northwest province, really extreme conditions. And then at that time, the carbon dioxide concentration of the atmosphere was 410 parts per million, so we call that the current. And then towards the end of the century, the forecast for carbon dioxide level is 700 parts per million. So that's the upward blue arrow. So if we first look at current conditions, and those two bars are just two cultivars, so don't worry too much about that. So the left one was Mondial, the right one was BP1, but I don't want to focus too much on that. We can also talk later about that if you want to. But so current atmospheric current temperature. If we then keep the carbon dioxide level the same, but we increase the temperature, as expected, the crop suffered a lot from heat stress and the yields dropped dramatically. If we then increase the carbon dioxide to the very high level, but kept the temperature the same, we saw a very strong positive effect on yield. So the forecasts that the models made of increased yields and because of higher carbon dioxide levels seem to be true, but the problem is we expect both temperature and carbon dioxide to increase, and that had, of course, again, a suppressive effect. So although the yields in this last case is still higher than the current optimal conditions, you can see that heat stress definitely had a quite suppressing effect. So just to sort of summarize, what we found is that climate change will definitely pose challenges to potato production and risk. And I think probably in the case of potatoes, these unpredictable severe events is probably our biggest problem. Like the big, strong cold fronts that we saw 2 years ago in Limpopo, for instance, that hit many crops out. But there are definitely also opportunities because of the positive yield response that we see under elevated carbon dioxide conditions. But we must keep in mind that it's counteracted by heat stress. We found that in most regions it is possible to shift planting dates to sort of avoid those severe heat stress conditions, but not in all regions. In regions where, especially in the center of the country, where it's already hot in summer, the risk of frost will not disappear. So you cannot move it so far earlier planting date that you will also avoid heat. One very important assumption is in both these studies is that water will not be limiting, because the assumption is we're already irrigating more than 85% of the plantings. So if we do have enough water, we will see positive effects in most regions. The problem is that's not guaranteed. If there's drought, there will likely not be enough water for irrigation, and then we'll have to sort of cut down on irrigation. And I think sort of my take-home messages, Murray said we should not only make forecasts and predictions. We should plan for that, but if you don't make those forecasts, how can you plan for that? So I think it's sort of both of them, and I think we should try to minimize risk by using the tools that we have, by improving efficiency, not trying to chase the highest yields, but improving the efficiency and lower the risk, keep the risk as low as possible, and use the tools available. And there are so many. And I think especially irrigation management, which is my field, will become even more important than it is already. And we have all these wonderful tools, but if we don't use them, then there's actually not much benefit from it. Okay, thank you. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. So I'm going to pass the question then to Gabrielle. What does a climate-ready potato farmer look like if he had to develop a climate readiness scorecard for potato growers? What would be the top five indicators be for preparedness?
So, Joe, how much time do we have? I think it certainly starts with having really good insight into hyperlocal data. So I think understanding not just what the climate of a region is doing, or what the climate shifts, or what the variability is doing in the region, but really understanding on a hyperlocal level what's happening on your farm, and understanding both the opportunities and the risks on your farm is critical. And that starts with having a weather station. I'll share a little bit more about it in a moment, but I think coupled with having weather station or sensors or hardware, if you've got data and you've got some insights, but you don't have the expertise, or you don't have the ability to actually practically apply that data to decision making, it's a little bit useless. Then it sort of becomes data for the sake of data. And we've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of months. Having data for the sake of data generates noise. It doesn't actually improve your ability. So I think building expertise, building an understanding of different climate terminologies, just sort of understanding things like delta T, things like growing degree days, understanding what that means for your crop, for your cultivar, and understanding how those indicators need to affect decision making, I think is key. That's two. You said five. So third one, I would say, which is a little bit of extension of building climate knowledge on farm level and expertise on farm level, is partner with consultants, partner with people in the broader value chain, whether it's a consultant or a crop advisor or researcher, but really surround yourself with people that understand, that can give recommendations, whether it's crop protection or longer term planning, for what kind of shifts you make, is really work with people that understand, that have that knowledge and broader expertise. I think particularly in the realm of chemistry or crop protection products, with these extremities, and it's not business as usual. With these extremities come increased risk, and we're really seeing it across a wide variety of crops, wide variety of regions, that understanding the relationship or the risks associated between the changing climate and the use of crop protection products is key. I think there's hidden risks there that we don't fully understand. And then I would say longer term, to be climate ready, there's a component of the here and now. So if I talk about hyperlocal data and influencing decision making on sort of farm level right now, there's a here and now. But understanding what the shifts look like over the longer term. Prof. Steyn mentioned, the work that they've done on looking at different responses. So understanding that different cultivars have different levels of elasticity. Some cultivars can cope with extremities better than others. So really understanding the longer term trend, the longer term shifts in your climate, and then the cultivars that you're working with and what response is. Is that 5?
Well, I hope you noted that 5. I think that's very important for the farmers. But then let's just go on to the question the second one that I have for you for the local data. What role do weather stations, climate intelligence platforms, and crop growth models play in helping growers make better real-time decisions?
So I think in terms of decision making, and I made the comment, but it's really not business as usual. So I think for a very long time, producers made decisions or put together programs or sort of followed kind of operational procedures, planting dates, harvesting dates, irrigation practices, a little sort of, we're going through the motions. And just understanding that in this context of increased volatility, increased variability, more extremities, and greater risk, having hyperlocal data on the farm, having a weather station, which gives you access to real in-time, hourly updates, but also hyperlocal forecasting. Maybe just to elaborate on that, hyperlocal forecasting really looks at what is happening on your farm. So what is happening in the microclimate of your farm? It forecasts and then calibrates. So there's a calibration process almost on an hourly basis. So that hyperlocal data gives you an opportunity to be less reactive and more proactive. To when you are planning your week operations, that you really have insights into the microclimate of your farm and therefore the micro risks related to your farm. And that's very different to satellite data. It's very different to the generalized forecasting or the general forecast that we have access to, or the international models that we have access to, and those have value. But understanding it on a hyperlocal, on a farm level, is really where the ability to be proactive in managing that risk comes in.
Yeah, definitely, because at the end of the day, that whole crop can be at risk if weather changes so quickly. Okay, Marijke, I just want to ask you, can genetics keep pace? No, are we breeding fast enough is the first one, sorry.
Can I quickly do my
Do you want to do yours first?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously,
Yes.
thanks.
So if I can just have the slides, please. Okay, so the major current priorities in plant breeding for potato in South Africa is then climate resilience, as we've also discussed now, and then also disease resistance, because as Martin has also mentioned, diseases and pests, and Guy was also mentioning that diseases and pests are changing together with climate change. So we need to be on top of it all the time, looking all the time at ways to breed for resistance to these pests. And then yield and broad adaptation, which is, of course, very important. But we'll also discuss that when we do the panel discussion. And then, of course, quality control, all the tuber characteristics, all the processing characteristics of the tubers need to be bred for, they can be genetically improved. Can I have the next slide? So, the technologies have been developing at a mind-boggling speed. So currently there's a lot of, if you look at international programs like in the Netherlands, the UK, they have a lot of molecular techniques now. So in previous years, they were quite successful only looking at one gene, for example, that changes a trait. But now, for example, heat resistance and drought tolerance is and even yield and processing quality is determined by many genes. So what they've now managed is to look at blocks of genes and to link a marker to a block of genes and then breed this marker into your potato cultivar so that then you know that your cultivar has resistance or tolerance. The same for disease and pest resistance. So, and you've all heard of gene editing now with CRISPR-Cas. So that's a new technology that's coming in to editing the genome to add a trait or to take a trait away that you don't want there. And then you have all these high throughput phenotyping and genotyping. The SNP chips, you may have heard about SNP chips that are now being used to do huge amounts of DNA work in a very short time. And then diploid breeding. That is something I think that the future potato breeding is going towards. You probably know that potatoes are tetraploid. So where most crops, for example, maize, and of course humans as well, have only 2 sets of chromosomes, potatoes have 4 sets of chromosomes. So each chromosome is repeated 4 times, and that makes breeding quite complex, and it makes response to breeding also quite complex. So what the scientists now are doing is moving towards diploidization of the tetraploid. And I will show you now how the technique works as well. But that makes breeding a lot more effective, certainly for the future. This is double haploid breeding. So this is a diploidization technique. So what they usually do is they take the tetraploid potato and then pollinate it with a wild relative, but that wild relative doesn't contribute any genetic material to that progeny. So what is left then is that only the DNA of the say, for example, you made a cross between something that has disease resistance, something that has stress tolerance, you have good progeny, then you cross it with this wild relative and it diploids it, then you have only 1 set of chromosomes which you can then double, for example, with colchicine, or sometimes there's spontaneous doubling. So then you have a pure breeding, non-segregating progeny there, and it's like an inbred line in maize breeding. So what can you do now? You can make a hybrid from the potato. So certainly in the future, hybrid potatoes through diploidization is going to be something that we are looking forward to. Then breeding potato for combined heat and drought stress. So they are using a lot of molecular techniques now to breed for heat and drought stress. And we will also shortly talk about broad adaptation versus specifically breeding for combined heat and drought stress. But there are already techniques very effective for breeding for combined heat and drought stress, because usually you won't find one stress condition in isolation from another. You always need to look at the combined effects of those. Thank you.
So you actually answered all your questions, but are we then breeding fast enough?
No. South Africa has very limited breeding capacity currently, which is really a pity, and that's something that should be given attention to in the future. So there are two approaches to breeding for example, climate resilience. The one is broad adaptation. So what would happen then is production areas would be classified into mega environments, and then you would breed for broad adaptation within that region. So not looking at heat and drought adaptation per se, but rather when you are breeding, exposing your lines to all kinds of conditions and then selecting for cultivars that are well adapted and that they will consistently have good yields irrespective of where they are planted within that regions. Then there's the more specific breeding, for example, heat and drought stress, where you would look at things like molecular markers or, so really using the new technology and also diploids to breed for resistance to better conditions. And what we should also focus on in South Africa is bringing, there is now this national resource, but we need to constantly bring in more, broadening the genetic base so that we don't work on a very small genetic base, but that we have a broad genetic base also to select for new threats and for better adaptation.
So keep on evolving, keep on developing, otherwise you stay behind. That's one of my slogans I learned the past 5 years. Just don't stay behind, keep on going.
Yeah.
So your questions are answered then. Prof. Maurice, I'm going to go back to a water question. As an irrigation farmer, it's a big headache. But your ultimate limiting resource, if water becomes increasingly scarce, what are the most impactful management changes growers can implement over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think I've touched on it in my talk. There are so many tools. And even if you use the most basic, like an auger or a spade, you have to use something. And I have a lot of respect for our farmers, and farmers, most of them have a lot of experience passed from generation to generation. But I've made measurements in many fields across different regions. And I've rarely seen under-irrigation. I mostly see over-irrigation. Yeah. So, of course, you have to have the experience, but I think we have all these wonderful tools available, and you can choose what you want to use. There are so many of them available. Just use something, at least, to assist you to make those decisions. So keeping on with those same fixed schedules for a season, that's where you try to rather be on the safe side, and that's where the risk of over-irrigation comes in, with all the disadvantages that go with that. So I think using the tools available is very important. And then I think it's a holistic system. It's not only managing the irrigation, keeping your soils healthy, try improving carbon levels in your soil, organic matter, to help improve the buffer capacity, water holding capacity of your soils. I think all of those, I want to say small things, but a combined effort of different practices can help to lower the risk. Because I think in the end is managing that risk and keeping the risk manageable on your farm is probably the most important thing to take from this session.
Definitely. Yeah, water is one of the scarce commodities, so I think we must say we're farming with water nowadays. Are we fighting, Gabrielle, the wrong battle? Will future yields losses be driven more by heat and drought stress, or by the secondary effects of pests, diseases, and changing production risks?
Can I answer that question after my presentation?
After your goodness, by now I should have asked you first for your presentation. But that's your question.
Great. I think my presentation will help answer that a little bit. So I'll start there. So I have the fun challenge of wrapping up 6 years of work in about 6 minutes, or a little bit less. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm really going to just take you on a journey that Villa has been on with partners Metos SA and TerraClim, that started with what is called the Eureka Climate Smart Agriculture Project. That project essentially sort of kicked off between 2019 and 2020, where we worked with international stakeholder Pessl Instruments, and got awarded, were successful in a project application to install over 200 weather stations in the Western Cape. It was a public-private partnership. We got funding from the Austrian government, from the South African government, and then the private partners co-funded the project. And I'll just show a very short clip of a little bit more of what that project was about. But essentially, at the fundamental core of this project, and the journey that evolved since then, so the project ended in 23, and 3 years later, we're still actively working, collaborating, and really what the core of it is how do you build climate resilience into an agricultural system on farm level, on consultancy level, the broader value chain. How do you really deepen climate resilience to ultimately make the industry more sustainable? So I'll start with a short video. Thank you.
Ek dink daar's nie 'n produsent in die land wat nie sal saamstem en self bekommerd kan wees oor klimaatsverandering soos ons dit tans beskou nie. Die enorme hoeveelheid fasette van plantgesondheidsbestuur gaan oor die klimaat en hoe jy daarteenoor moet reageer. Ons staan vandag hier so in die pragtige Somerset Wes omgewing, is vergeleë in plaas, maar as jy net kyk na die topografie, dan sal jy onmiddellik sien dat daar's geweldige verskille in die hellings. En hierdie projek is regtig gefokus om beter langtermyn klimaatstoestande maar per helling letterlik te kan doen. En wat ons in staat stel om 200 van hierdie stasies hier agter my oor die hele Wes-Kaapstreek te kry, sodat ons werklik baie meer digte weerstasie inligting kan versamel en oor die lang tyd regtig kan kyk oor hoe die klimaat 'n impak het op ons vandag.
One of the main challenges that TerraClim faces is our inaccessibility to climate data. And specifically in the Western Cape, our terrain is so complex. And for that, we need a good weather station network that is positioned in the right locations to quantify our climate correctly and to quantify climate change correctly. And that's where this collaboration with Pessl and Meteos SA in establishing a new network of weather stations is fundamental and really important for the agricultural sector and in the context of climate change analysis for the future.
Boere weet dat daar 'n sterk verband is tussen terrein en grondeienskappe, soos gronddiepte en tekstuur, maar ook die watertafel. En daar's ook 'n sterk verband tussen topografie en klimaat, veral temperatuur, maar ook reënval en wind. Ons rol op hierdie projek is om baie akkurate topografiese data te verskaf, om die klimaat op streek, land en boordvlak te modelleer.
All agricultural sectors can benefit from TerraClim in that it is tailored per crop type and it provides you with high resolution information to farm and field level as well as in-season information. And what we're seeing from season to season in the context of climate change is that no season is the same, and therefore emphasizing the need for this kind of a tool to aid decision making.
So a little over 2 years during that project, as I mentioned, we installed over 200 weather stations in the Western Cape, and that took the national footprint of weather stations of the Metos SA network to over 600. And so we wrapped up that project in June 2023. Villa, Metos and TerraClim, we sort of sat around the table and we said, well, it's great to feed this data into the TerraClim pipeline and improve climate modeling and interpolations. It's great for the farmers that have access to the live data and the hyperlocalized forecasting. But how do you take a network of 600 weather stations, that rough calculation generates about 100 million data points. And how do you put it into the broader industry's hands? In a way that's easily accessible, in a way that's digestible, in a way that's not data for the sake of data that generates noise, but really put the key pertinent information in people's hands that's ultimately going to change decision-making on farm in field level. And so we embarked on the Villa Regional's Weather Report project 3 months later, 3 months after the project. And we launched what is now known as the Villa Regional Weather Reports at the end of January this year. So we launched in 46 regions. Watch out in September, there's a couple more regions coming, collaborating with industry bodies on sort of taking it to the next level and deeper insights and sort of adding more value into the report. But essentially, at the heart of this report, there's 3 components to it. It gives you a snapshot of the week. So it's based on about 4 weather stations, hyper-localized data that's integrated and averaged out. Snapshot of what is your weather forecast for the week, really based on ground truth data. And I can't emphasize that enough, that if too much of the data is interpolated or too much of it is satellite and too much of it is generalized or based on international models, and we don't have that ground truthing, it really has an impact on the accuracy. So the report gives you that forecast based on ground truth data. The second page of that report is a hindsight table, which allows you to put your current season in the context of the last 5 years, and then look at what was the 3 and 5 year average of your region to really sort of understand how does my current season differ from the last 5 years, and what is sort of the longer term trend emerging. And that's the point I made earlier about what do we need to do to be climate ready, and that's not just being more proactive in the here and now, but really understanding the longer term climate shifts of our regions. And then the last report is a hindsight disease model, which really just gives you an indication of when were your weather conditions conducive for pest and disease development, with some exciting work being done by TerraClim with Metos around disease forecasting. A lot of validation work to be done, a lot of research, but I think as we put data in people's hands in a way that's sort of processed, packaged and disseminated, that sort of unlocks a little bit more insight, it truly, I think, unlocks the opportunity for further innovation. So disease forecasting validation is one element. I spoke earlier about understanding the relationship between chemistry and the risks that lie with climate in that regard, and really sort of integrating climate data and insights into decision making and really making it sort of a cornerstone of your IPM or pest management strategy. So I'll thank you. I'll end there on that, and then maybe just to get back to Frannen, your question around what poses greater risk. Is it heat stress or is it pest and disease?
Effects of pest and disease
development. Certainly through this project and through sort of looking at the trends that are developing, and Tara mentioned it in the video, that climate change, climate volatility, variability, and the extremities that we're seeing is different from region to region. And so the answer is both. They both pose an equal risk. We're certainly not fighting the wrong battles. I think we're probably needing to fight them a little bit harder and a little bit faster. But which one poses a greater threat depends on the trend, the climate trend that's developing in your area, and it really is very unique. Even in a small pocket of Natal or small pockets of the Western Cape, we're seeing significant differences in the climate trends that are developing.
Definitely. I just want to ask Prof. Guy, I think you wanted to come in here and ask another question or say something.
Thanks for the opportunity. It looks like all the elements are in place to turn what is already a very successful enterprise into something that is both successful, productive, and resilient. it looks pretty healthy to me if we get everything right. But the one opportunity that we haven't talked about in the climate space is the ability to turn these sandy soils in which potatoes are produced into soils that can store more carbon, for example, through the use of appropriate biochar products, and in a way to add farming carbon to the farming of potatoes. The value of being able to increase the soil carbon could really increase the potential profits in the space, while also improving the soil water holding capacity of the sandy soils. So I think this is an underappreciated opportunity, and could really be a big way to transform this industry into something that is contributing to carbon sequestration while also improving soil water holding capacity and reducing those impacts. So I'd be very open to working with anybody who's keen to figure out how best to do that and what sort of products to use. Thanks.
Thank you for that. So people need to take note for that. One action for tomorrow, then, all three of you, and you can just take chance to answer this one. If every potato producer in South Africa left this session committed to doing one thing differently next season, what should that action look like?
Maybe I can start. Maybe my suggestion is not for like the next season, but what each farmer can do for his specific farm, his conditions. I think each farmer knows his farm well. He should sort of prioritize what are the most important risks for his farm, for his conditions. And if I can use a simple example, but maybe one of the best examples is if we look at the Sunveld, what are the opportunities to, for instance, escape heat? If you produce in the central Sunveld away from the ocean, we know that summers are getting very hot. You can produce potatoes, but is that the best time to produce potatoes in summer? You will get the highest yields, but you will pay the penalty in terms of water use efficiency. You'll need twice as much water to produce potatoes in summer, even more than twice than producing that same crop in the winter, where you also have some rainfall that supplement the water supply. So if water becomes limiting, should I continue producing potatoes there? Can I shift planting dates? How can I avert risk? Sort of on my farm, for my conditions, get the most sustainable production system for your crop.
Yeah, so it all comes back to the farmer to decide. That's hectic. Yours.
I think perhaps many farmers are already doing this on some level, but I would say every decision that you make in terms of your IPM strategy, make weather and climate data a key core component of that. So start integrating climate and weather data in a much deeper way than you have before, and build the expertise to do that.
Okay, great. Marika.
I think in the broader sense, really investing in breeding materials adapted specifically to South African conditions and also changing conditions in South Africa.
All right, Prof. Guy, last one from your side.
We have a lot of resilience, a lot of innovation, and very effective producers in this country. Yeah, the benign of government of the farming industry now has built an incredible indigenous endemic natural resilience, and it can only go from strength to strength. So, research outfits throughout the country stand ready to help. All you got to do is engage, and we're there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. We have a few minutes left. Maybe there's one or two farmers. I know not everyone is keen to ask a question, but I think this is your time. You can really ask whatever you want. These are your panelists. I think you can trust them with it. Are there any questions?
Hello, Peter Brink. Perhaps more a comment. I think we forgot about groundwaters that we're using, and we should look at that as well. How are we going to manage our balls in these conditions? And perhaps just a question, with this climate change, weather that's changing, more rainfall at one stadium, what's going to happen to our groundwater levels? Should we be hazardous on this one, or should we be okay with higher groundwater levels because we have more rainfall at one stage? So are we going to see a rise in groundwater levels? Martin, we should have asked Julian Conrad this question, but I don't know. Prof. Guy, perhaps he can say something on this one.
I can say something. Well, it's quite interesting. We've been using a new satellite product that's able to detect changes in groundwater mass. I won't explain the methodology, but it's a very clever set of satellites that is reacting to the mass of underground groundwater in big aquifers. And the one, this is not going to be a surprise, but one of the hotspots of groundwater depletion is around Verlorenvlei in the West Coast area. So we suspect that might be the potato farmers who may have been depleting the groundwater a little too much there. I'm not saying it's definitely the case, but just a little flag there. We would be more than happy. I've got a hydrological modeling team at my school, and we can also model climate to be able to do projections of groundwater changes. We're getting quite sophisticated now. We're using all sorts of new technologies, including isotopes and various other things. So I think we're in a position to be able to support you much better with respect to understanding your groundwater flows, sources, and how much can be sustainably used. So be very, very open to discussion about that. Thank you.
Great answer. For me, I can't be blamed for all the water that I irrigate on the farm because there's a lot of mine industries next to me. So I think they are more the culprit than me. Any other question? Any other farmer? Another question?
If I can make a comment, I think we must use El Nino as a marketing tool for potatoes because this is one of the products that use water most efficient to produce the most food. So we must tell the country, save water when El Nino is coming and eat potatoes.
I'll vote for that one. So to round it off, thank you so much, Prof. Marike, Gabrielle, Prof. Martin, Prof. Guy. Thank you for your time and your effort. It's really an honor to sit with you guys and learn from you. My cup is a bit, it's not empty anymore. I was thinking the whole time, well, these people that are very brave with what they do, what I must do on my farm. So I hope every farmer took something away from this session. And just one last plea, because I can say it while I'm on the mic, just look after our farmers. At the end of the day, I just call it's a milking cow. Once the milk is dry, the whole industry can't get enough milk. So I'm a woman, maybe I'm one of the cows standing up and just look after the herd of cattle today that produce this wonderful variety of vegetables that is for the future to come. I mean, your children want to grow potatoes. So if you guys take something from this, of my setting, my panel today, just look after us. Not only saying it, believing in us, look after us. It's not easy to plant and to make it work. with all the varieties and the factors and the risks that we have to take, there's a really, really big mental pressure on us today. That's why I can just honestly say that happened to my husband. So look after us so that we can keep on producing. And while we are here, take hands. I mean, we're not an island on our own. Take hands and learn from one another. The co-creation of these 2 days are actually inevitant. I mean, this is priceless. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the 2 days of Congress. Drive safe back safe, and thank you for your time. Thank you. Thanks. The mic.
Yeah.
Just one thing. As a farmer, I'm glad to say that my Toyota has 500,000 of kilometers. So I take care of my Toyota.
Well, that's, you see, Toyota people, like, you know. Yeah, I mean, what a impressive panel discussion, this weather, climate, and are we killing the planet? You know, if you think about what's happening. In Europe, we've had record temperatures. Friends of mine there, I mean, like they used to build their houses for cold. Now they have to build them for heat. But if we think about climate smart farming, it's not about farming with fear. It's about farming with foresight. That's what we've really got to, what the panel spoke about. You know, they mentioned a couple of things, that Oni and Roni. You know, I remember the Oni at school. You know, it wasn't a pleasant experience with Oni and Roni. But these things are super unpleasant, that's we know, and the weather is either too hot or too cold. It reminds me of my wife, you know, like sometimes when I get home, in a sense, she's either too hot or too cold. Not the hot that I want, but other hot. So remember that Oni and Roni is not good business, okay? And yeah, we spoke about the breeding, the heat and the drought stress, broadening the genetics. Yeah, so, and the increase the water holding capacity. We spoke about sensors, disease forecasting. Yeah, I think that is certainly, we need to have foresight. It's here, it's not going to go away. There's urgency. Ignore it and it will hurt you. You have to do something about it. You have to really get into action. It's not something that you can just steer away from. So take action. So thank you very much for that panel discussion. We are now going to move to lunch, but I certainly want to invite you to go to the exhibition stands. There's lots of great information. There are prizes. There are free gifts. We love free. I mean, that's, you know, so go and get some free stuff and get free information and enjoy lunch. We see you after lunch and to continue with soil health and plant nutrition. Thanks.